If everybody would have a seat, we're going to go ahead and get started. Yeah. If everybody would take a seat, we'll go ahead and get started. I will now call to order the meeting of the Omaha Planning Board. The Planning Board members that are here today are David Rosacker, Michael Pate, Jeff Moore, Patrick Morse, Sidney Franklin, Jorge Sotolongo, and I am Greg Rosenbaum, Chairman. Members of the city staff that are in attendance today are Dave Fanslau, Planning Director, Eric England, Assistant Planning Director, Mike Carter, Current Planning Manager, Robert LaRocco, Planning Board Administrator, Jennifer Taylor of the City Law Department, and Lisa Agans, our Recording Secretary. Our rules of procedure are as follows. Notice of this hearing has been published. Copies of today's agenda are located on the table in front of us. You are welcome to come down and pick one up. The cases on the consent agenda will be heard first. Consent cases are perceived by the Planning Board to be non-controversial, have already been heard, or been recommended for layover, and therefore will be read and voted on without the opportunity for your testimony. If you wish to testify, you may remove the case from the consent agenda. When each consent case is read, I will ask if anyone wants the case removed. If you do, please stand up and say so, and the case will be removed. This case will then be heard in the order in which it appears on the regular agenda after we go through the consent cases. When the case is heard, you'll have the opportunity to come to the podium, clearly state your name and address, and give your testimony at that time. When hearing cases on that regular agenda, the board will first hear from the applicant. After the applicant states their case, we will hear from the proponents, and then we will hear from the opponents. After both sides are heard, the public hearing will be closed, and no additional testimony will be permitted unless a board member requests additional information. When at the podium, please clearly state your name, address, and whom you are representing for the record. Your testimony is very important to us. In the interest of time and courtesy to others, please be short and to the point. We will try to limit each case to 10 minutes. Those directly involved in the case, please speak first. We request that large groups select a spokesperson to represent that group, therefore eliminating repetitive testimony. When giving testimony, please provide new information and try not to repeat what has been previously said. We do ask that all speakers and others be treated with courtesy and with respect. In that regard, please remain silent while seated, and please turn off your cell phones. Our decision to approve, deny, or continue a case made here today will be forwarded to the City Council for another public hearing and final disposition by the City Council. Conditional use permits are an exception to this rule. The board's decision made here today on conditional use permits are final and not forwarded to the City Council. Lastly, upon the advice of the Law Department, all communications to the board members from attorneys or other interested parties should be transmitted through the Planning Department so that they are made a part of the public record. The department will then transmit all that information to the board as well as to the rest of the public. Rezoning matters are an exception to this rule. A current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act can be found in a white binder on the east wall of this room. We'll get started with the reading of the consent cases. Like I said, if you're here and your case is on consent and you want it to be heard today, you have to stand up and let me know, and we will remove that case. Agenda item number 2, case C8-20-259, applicant Brad Louth. It is on for approval. Request approval of a special use permit to allow construction, sales, and service in the CC district pending. Property is located within the Flood Fringe Overlay District. This was laid over from our December meeting. Location, northwest of Rose Blumpkin Drive and Harney Street. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Turn the page. Agenda item number 8, case C10-21-5, C12-21-6. Applicant, Club Car Wash Operating LLC. It is on for approval. Request, preliminary and final plat approval of Hyde Heights Lot 1 re-subdivision, a minor plat inside city limits with approval of the MCC Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District. Location, southwest of 108th Street and West Maple Road. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none, agenda item number 10, case C10-21-9, C12-21-10. Applicant, Lauren Johnson, Celebrity Homes, Omaha. It is on for approval. Request, preliminary plat approval of Deer Crest North, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from DR to R4. Location, southeast of 114th and State Streets. Anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none, agenda item number 11, case C10-21-11, C12-21-12. Applicant, Majestic Point LLC. It is on for approval. Request, preliminary plat approval of Majestic Point East, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to DR, R4, R5, and R6. Location, southwest of 168th and State Streets. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 12, case C10-20-15. Applicant, Garrett and Joseph Sikora. Hope I said that correctly. It is on for approval. Request, rezoning from R4 and R435 to R4. Location, 3216 South 56th Street and 5628 Haskell Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none, agenda item number 15, case C10-7-3, applicant Invest Omaha MC LLC. It is on for layover. Request, major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for Midtown Crossing. Location, northeast of 33rd and Farnham Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 16, case C8-16-294, applicant Eco Storage Investments LLC. It is on for layover. Request, major amendment to the special use permit to allow scrap and salvage in the HI district. Location, 3701 Dolman Ave. Anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none, agenda item number 17, case C7-21-20, applicant Todd Polly is on for approval. Request, approval of a conditional use permit to allow college and university facilities in the GC district. Property is located within an ACI 1 area of civic importance overlay district. Location, 4200 Douglas Street. Anyone want this removed? Seeing none, and finally, agenda item number 18, case C7-21-21, applicant Jeff Lake. It is on for approval. Request, approval of a conditional use permit to allow indoor sports and recreation in the CC district. Location, 600 North 210th Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay. Those are the consent cases. Do we have a motion for the cases that are on consent for approval?
Motion to approve cases 2, 8, 10, 11, 12, 17, and 18.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you please record the vote?
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Franklin? Yes. Sotolongo?
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
Do we have a motion for the cases on for layover?
Motion layover cases number 15 and 16.
We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you please record the vote?
Pate,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Franklin. Sotolongo. Rosacker. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
Okay, those consent cases, they've been voted on. No further action will be taken today. If you're here for one of those cases, you are welcome to stay, or you are free to leave. So thank you for coming down. We'll get started with agenda item number 1, case C3-20-225. Applicant, Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha, request approval of the Alcorn Landing Tiff redevelopment project plan. This was laid over from our December meeting. Location, 20603 and 20605 Alcorn Drive. Don, you're presenting.
Yes, I am. Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning Department. Yeah, this project was presented last month, and it's essentially the same project. It's located along Alcorn Drive, this is Alcorn Main Street, Alcorn Drive. These two parcels here, one vacant, one occupied by a single-family home. Single-family home will be demolished, and a matching pair of 3-story mixed-use buildings will be constructed on the site. Each building will have 7 residential units on the upper levels, one of which will be a for-sale condo, the other will be 6 in each building will be rental apartments. These will be above a main floor of commercial uses. Each building will have a basement that kind of daylights to the south end of the site. Again, this is all the same as was presented a month ago at the last meeting. Changes are primarily involve parking. We have a new site plan. This is Exhibit A, submitted as part of the applicant's application. It's their proposal to construct approximately 24 on-street parking stalls as part of the project along Alcorn Drive. We have them diagonal on the north side, parallel on the south side. Additionally, they changed the basement of one of the buildings, the building that will be built second, to go from 2 parking spaces in that daylighted basement to 16 parking spaces. So they're proposing a total of 42 parking spaces in all. The specific building materials and the design of the public improvements, those need to meet ACI standards. As the project progresses, the applicants need to continue to work with Public Works and the City Planning Department for the design review aspects of the project. But the land uses are all appropriate for the site. Been reviewed by the Tiff committee, has their approval. I would note that there are 2 buildings. They're going to build one after the other. It is a phased project. We are approving this project as one Tiff project. So before the first building can be occupied, we do expect to and will require that all the public improvements as proposed be constructed. Total project investment is about $6.3 million. You're asking for $985,609 in TIF support. We ask for your approval. Put up a rendering too here, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Any other proponents wishing to speak?
Good afternoon, Michael Sands, 1700 Farnham Street, on behalf of the developer. I appreciate Don's explanation of what's happened in the interim since last month. I won't get into too much detail because I took up enough of your time last month, but as Don said, there's been a lot of progress in the last month with respect to the things that were brought up at the last meeting. Specifically, my clients met with the Alcorn Downtown BID, had a very good and productive conversation. That's what led to the changes to the plan to add more on-site parking in that second building, And the BID is pleased with the new plans. They've actually submitted or sent us a letter here voicing their official support of the plan as revised. So we appreciate that. We appreciate the planning department's continual work with us. We will continue to work with them as well. I'm happy to answer any questions. My client, Chad Bumstead, is here as well, and we appreciate your consideration.
Michael, just wanted to be noted that the Alcorn BID is in favor of it, according to your letter, as long as those parking stalls are included in your project, so.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct, and that's our intent.
Yeah, also, Michael, just to confirm, I know that the parking on the surface parking hasn't been finally designed yet, but that it is your commitment, right, that those will all be built during the first phase.
So all of the parking and the public right-of-way, we will certainly build out during the first phase. As far as the on-site parking is concerned, the first building will have the original two that were planned for the condo owners. The second building, or the second phase, if you would want to call it that, is the building that will have the 16 garage spaces. It's our belief that in the interim, the on-street parking, which we'll undertake initially, as well as maybe being able to utilize that second lot before the ground is broken on there, will satisfy the needs of that first building during the construction period.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Michael? Thank you, Michael.
Thank
Any
you.
other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Additional comments, questions from the board? Eric?
I just want to say before you do, I just want to thank Michael, thank you and the developer for taking the time to meet with all of the retail members there and the neighbors to make sure that it's a compatible project. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Eric?
Yeah, I just reiterate, there has been a lot of coordination, a lot of meetings between parties, a lot of conversations that involve the city, city council members, BID, adjacent property owners. So that's good, the level of communication that's been had recently. I just want to point out that the proposed parking stalls on the adjacent street has not gone through a final approval plan through planning and public works. So I just want to point out that when we get to that stage of building permit, the OPW process, if there is a potential that one stall has to be removed because of those standards that the city has in place, I just want to put that on the record. So I don't want that to derail anything, but obviously we'll maximize the parking to that we are allowed to. That being said, staff recommends approval.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you please record the vote?
Moore? Yes. Morris? Yes. Franklin? Yes. Sotolongo? Yes. Rosacker? Yes. Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Agenda item number 3, case C3-20-244. Applicant Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha. Request approval of the 2021 Consolidated Action Plan. Location, Omaha in the 3-mile extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction, and bills presented.
Hello, Bill Lukash, Omaha Planning Department. Thank you very much for this time. I want to present to you the 2021 Action Plan, which is 1 year out of our 5-year consolidated plan, our 2018 to 2023 consolidated plan. This has gone through public hearing already. We received public comment back on this. This is kind of the draft final version of it. We are still waiting on our final budget appropriation from HUD. The federal government just passed the 2021 budget at the end of December, so we don't know our final allocations, but I don't think it will change greatly. Excuse me. That number will greatly change what you see before you. In the summary spreadsheet that we always provide, there are a number of activities that we do public infrastructure, new construction of single-family housing, single-family housing rehabilitation, multifamily housing construction, multifamily housing rehabilitation, housing placement, job training and preparation, slum and blight elimination, homeless services, financial and housing education, and home buyer financing, and along with the administrative budget that goes along with administering these funds. A couple of new projects this year that I just want to touch on real quick. Charles Street Phase 2 is connecting Charles Street between 17th, North 17th and North 18th Street. There's also a tiny homes project going on in that area, and previously last year we completed Charles Street between 16th and 17th Street. This will greatly increase the neighborhood connectivity, walkability of that area, safety, I think, because the police will be able to navigate that area much easier than they did in the past. That one, and then the community housing building program, I think is worth note. We've had a lot of requests from home builders and developers in the past that do want to build affordable housing. There needs to be a subsidy somewhere along the path for them to do the affordable housing. One thing the city can do with CDBG funds very well is acquire property and clear them either of environmental hazards or old houses, foundations, prepare the site for housing construction. So this is a new program that we're going to try. We will clear a site that could have multiple houses on it, and then we'll put it out for an RFP and hopefully get a lot of good proposals back, select one that makes the most sense for that neighborhood. If this program works well, we'll definitely expand this to other areas as well. It's an alternative to how we do the housing construction now, and I think it might be a little bit more effective in the long run. So with that, do you have any questions I can answer for you?
Okay, thank you, Bill. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Additional comments, questions from the board? Eric, do you want to add?
I just want to reiterate Director Fanslow's comments in the pre-meeting that Bill and his Community Development Division do a wonderful job on a yearly basis and oftentimes amended basis with the consolidated plan. So with that being said, staff recommends approval.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you please record the vote?
Morris?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Moore? Yes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
We're going to take agenda items 4 and 9 together. Agenda item number 4, case C3-21-2, applicant Lockwood Development. Request approval of amendment to the future land use element of the City of Omaha Master Plan to reclassify the intersection of 204th and F Streets from a convenience mixed-use area, 10 acres, to a neighborhood mixed-use area, 30 acres, along with approval of a 20% variance to allow up to 36 acres of mixed-use development. Location, southwest of 204th and F Street. And agenda item number 9, case C10-21-7, C12-21-8, applicant Lockwood Development. Request preliminary plat approval of Iron Bluff, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to R4, R6, R7, and MU. Location, southwest of 204th and F Street. I see Jim is up to present.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Jim Bouger, 10250 Regency Circle, Suite 300, attorney for the applicant Lockwood Development. Mr. Sotolongo, welcome to the planning board. Thank you for volunteering your time to be on the board. I think you'll have fun participating in our projects that we're working on in Omaha. So with that said, this is kind of my warm-up project for today. We have a main event coming here in a little bit, but this is a project, a mixed-use project involving an actual MU part of it, some single-family residential, some multifamily, located at 204th and F Street on the southwest corner. This particular area of Omaha has grown pretty exponentially in the last few years. A ton of single-family projects, some of which I've been involved in, the Grandview Ridge Estates project immediately to the north, Immediately to the north of that, the Bravada subdivision is well underway. Immediately to the west of this project, you have a couple of projects that Jerry Torzon is developing, Westbury Farm and Westbury Creek, and then to the north and to the west, you have Blue Sage Creek. All of those developments have started in the last 5 years and are growing and building out pretty quickly. So this particular corner is ripe for development. The site itself that we're developing is about 102 acres. There's a 50-acre parcel that's, I think it's mauve is maybe the color. The Alcorn Public Schools owns that site today. It is proposed future site of both an elementary school and a middle school. We have been working some with EPS in our project. There's some common entrances, obviously, and right-of-way that needs to be constructed. So as of right now, that project hasn't been announced. There's no time frame for the school district to start construction, but with all the growth going on in the area, I'm sure it won't be too long. The first request that we have is an amendment to the master plan, which will accommodate the commercial portion of our project. 204th Street, if anybody's, I'm sure most everybody has driven up and down 204th Street, has really evolved to be a central development location, is right at the precipice of our ridge, so to speak, for Omaha, and is kind of the last frontier for development in a lot of aspects in Omaha on the western edge. And so our request today is to amend the master plan to expand the commercial that's allowed at this intersection. It is consistent with other corners of arterial streets in our community, and is cited in the report. And I think the planning department is supportive of this. Really corrects what we believe is a defect in the master plan in not having this corner allowed as a 30-acre corner. So that's part of our request. And then we have obviously our plat and rezoning of the project. We'd be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding the project itself. I ask for your support and approval of the project today. Thank you.
Hey, Jim, in one of the items, it talks about the traffic signal at 204th and F. There's already a traffic signal there. What improvements are you going to be making to that?
So that signal was constructed as a temporary signal about 2 years ago, and this project, along with some adjacent projects, are part of the permitting process with the state. 204th Street is obviously it's a state highway, so the NDOT has regulatory authority over that intersection, and they are requiring that the permanent signal go in as part of the reconstruction of F Street. So we've had some ongoing discussions that the city's well aware of. Ryan Haas has been involved in the discussions, and there's a lot of parties at the table, including Blue Sage, Grandview, Alcorn Public Schools, the state of Nebraska, to try and get this segment of F Street built from 204th Street extending to the west. And it's an ultimate construction of a 3-lane section. And we've just had some challenges in getting everybody financially aligned to get all the improvements done. But with our project, with another phase of Blue Sage Creek going on, and with the Grandview Ridge Estates subdivision, there's going to be a lot of parties that are contributing to that particular project. So we are actively working on that so all the projects can move forward.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Yep.
Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close public hearing. Comments and questions from the board? Eric?
Yeah, so as Jim mentioned, there's been a lot of activity in this vicinity in recent months and years. Yeah. The intersection and 204th Street in general has evolved substantially over the past 20 years. So yeah, the identification of this intersection as a convenience center in the master plan staff agrees is outdated, and we are supportive of the increase to the neighborhood size center along with the 20% variance to allow 36 acres of office commercial at the intersection. Along with the existing mixed use on the northeast corner and what's proposed with this project, there would still be about 8.5 acres left over for office commercial activity, which could be utilized by the neighbor on the southeast of the intersection has expressed interest in potential development, although they have not met with us yet. So we believe the increase is justified and appropriate. Specifically related to the Plat and rezoning, I won't get into many of the details. If you do have any specific questions, let me know. We do have some coordination still with the development team that we'll have to work through as far as specifics of the mixed-use plan, as well as some of the infrastructure, wetlands, location of the park. So we have every intention of working with them, and staff is recommending approval. I'll start with agenda item number 4, which is the master plan amendment. Staff recommends approval.
Do we have a motion?
Motion approved.
We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you record the vote, please?
Franklin?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Moore? Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
Regarding agenda item number 9, staff recommends approval of the rezoning from AG to R4, R6, R7, and MU, subject to submittal of an acceptable mixed-use development agreement. Approval of the preliminary plat, subject to the 36 conditions in the recommendation report.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion for approval of the rezoning from AG to R4, R6, R7, and MU, subject to submittal of an acceptable mixed-use development agreement, and approval of the preliminary plat, subject to the 36 conditions in the recommendation report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you record the vote, please?
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Franklin? Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion approved.
Agenda item number 5, case C321-22. Applicant Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha request approval of 22Q Senior Housing Tiff Redevelopment Project Plan. Location southeast of 23rd and Q Streets. Don?
Yes, Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning Department. I'll take you to South Omaha with this project, located at the southeast corner of 23rd and Q Streets. This project involves new construction of a 40-unit senior living apartment building. It's on a vacant 1.3-acre site that was formerly occupied by a church and school. This is an affordable housing project using low-income housing tax credits, a LIHTC project. It's also kind of a mixed income project. 32 of the units, the residents will need to be income qualified to rent those, as they will be LIHTC units. The other 8 will be market rate units. On the site, turn this around, on the south end of the site, will be constructed a surface parking facility with about 42 off-street parking stalls. The developer of the project, I'll put up some elevations here, is 2215 Q Street LLC. It's managed by Rob Woodling. Mr. Woodling has done a couple of other senior living projects, including a senior living TIF project in Omaha, and has done many in the region, including Iowa. So he's very experienced. Total project investment in the neighborhood is $6,346,156 approximately. The request for TIF support is for $450,000 in TIF. Again, this is TIF money is money that is generated by the project. It wouldn't exist without the project, and it goes back into the project. The project meets the requirement for our TIF program. It's an appropriate land use for the area, and it complies with the goals of the city's master plan. And we ask for your approval.
Okay. Thank you, Don. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Name and address, please.
Rob Woodling, Foundations Development, 1886 South 126th Street. Thank you for your time today. As Don said, this is going to be a mixed income, primarily affordable housing senior living complex on 23rd and Q. So it'd be an infill development where currently there's underutilized services and public improvements that we will be fully utilizing then. We've engaged the neighbors. We had a Zoom meeting this last week to discuss with the neighbors. We sent out over almost nearly 100 letters to neighbors. We also offered, if they weren't comfortable with the Zoom format, to contact me directly, and we'd be more than happy to meet with them, and no one took up that option. But we did have some good conversations with the neighbors. Their biggest concern was the speed of traffic on Q Street, and if there's anything that could be done about that. They also had some concerns about coming north on South 23rd Street up to Q. What's the visibility like? On the south side of Q Street, there is it's no parking on that side, so there's a pretty clear access view in that area. So be more than happy to answer any questions you may have, and thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Questions or comments from the board?
I'd like to make a comment. Just want to commend the developer on the project. As a resident of South O, I think it's a promising development and maybe an example for future developments. And it's an underserved senior population, so I appreciate the thought and work that went into this proposal.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional comments, questions? Eric?
No, I just want to mention one zoning item. The applicant has been working with city staff and will need a waiver of reduction of parking. But as I mentioned, with this type of senior living and infill project, I don't see any issues with that moving forward. Staff recommends approval.
Do we have a motion? Motion to approve. Second. We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you please record the vote?
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Franklin? Yes. Sotolongo?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Agenda items 6 and 7, let's skip those. I don't think there's any interest in those today. Agenda item number, we'll take them both together. Agenda item number 6, case C3-21-1, applicant Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha, request approval of the Crossroads Tiff redevelopment project plan, location northwest of 72nd and Dodge Street. Agenda item number 7, case C10-21-23, C10-21-24, C10-21-3, C12-21-4, applicant Lockwood Development, request preliminary plat approval of the Crossroads, a subdivision inside city limits with waivers to section 5399 sidewalks and 53914 green corners, along with rezoning from R1, R8, LC, and GC to MU, repeal of the MCC Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District from a portion of the site, and expansion of the ACI 2 Area of Civic Importance Overlay District. Location, northwest of 72nd and Dodge Streets. May we hear from the applicant, please? Hi, Jim.
Hello, good afternoon again. Jim Bouger, 10250 Regency Circle, Suite 300, here on behalf of the applicant, KJ Crossroads. KJ Crossroads is a joint venture involving Lockwood Development, whose principal is Chip James, and Century Development, whose principal is Frank Krejci. Today, I have a number of people here with me that are going to help in our presentation and explain the project, since it is one of some significance here in our community. From Lockwood Development, I have Jude Beller, Emily O'Connor, Bob Begley, Lindsay Banks. From Hall and Basham Architects, Kurt Caesar, Lampert Nearson and Associates, who are the civil engineers, or one set of the civil engineers, Terry Atkins and Joe Flaxbeard. And Olson Associates is also providing engineering consulting services. as well as design services. Doug Halverson is here and will help in the presentation today as well. So this project is obviously commands a lot of attention, including a newspaper article just a couple of days ago, and we've had some other press coverage. It's been a long time coming to our community. We have had some neighborhood meetings. We've reached out directly to the immediately surrounding commercial users. We had a Zoom meeting on November 18th, 2020, and a Zoom meeting just this Monday on January 4th. We've had some participation from city representatives. Dave Fanslaw, I believe, maybe participated in both meetings. And I know Brinker and Pete Festerson were both city council members, were both on our Zoom call last week, or this week. We had quite a bit of representation. That was more of a lot of the area association representation. There's some large associations in the adjoining area, north, south, and east principally. We had good participation in those Zoom meetings, good Q&A. I think the meetings went quite well. Provided some input for us that we will obviously consider as we move forward with the project. We're here today to discuss a couple things. We have Tiff, which Bridget is going to discuss probably in more detail than we will. I'm going to focus our presentation today, meaning the development team, on what this project looks like, what's all involved in the project, the schedule and the timing. We have a PowerPoint presentation that we're going to make that will hopefully pictorially describe the various challenges that we faced and also express the exciting elements of the development that you're going to see come out of the ground here in the next couple of years as we go vertical. But there's a lot of work to do before we get to that point, and you see some of that ongoing. If you drive up and down along Dodge and 72nd Street, you see a lot of demolition activity going on, and that will continue for some time. So this is a complete redevelopment of what is the existing mall area, plus some additional buildings which were formerly a grocery store. And so those parcels in the aggregate are nearly 40 acres. And again, we're basically wiping that down to a clean slate and starting over. Today we're here to talk about our preliminary plat. We have a couple of OMC municipal code waivers for sidewalk and green corner, rezoning to mixed use. The entire site will be a mixed use zoning. The nature of the project along Dodge Street, it falls within the ACI area, and so the entire site will be subject to the ACI-2 overlay. As I indicated, Bridget Hadley in a separate agenda item will talk about the Tiff. We will talk a little bit about that in our presentation as well. The city provided a staff report to us last week. It was favorable for the project. There are a few items within the recommendations that will require some further discussion with the city, and those discussions are ongoing, and they have been for the last 2 years. So it's a big, complicated project, and anyway, I think there's been some really outstanding collaboration between a lot of people. So the Crossroads itself has really been a vision, the redevelopment of the Crossroads for over 10 years. Mr. Krejci bought that property and with the intent of redeveloping it, and 7 years ago our city council actually passed a redevelopment plan for not only for the immediate shopping center area but for the larger area around the Crossroads, nearly at the same time that it was included in a community redevelopment area, which made it available for the TIF incentives that we're seeking. But in that redevelopment plan, if you care to read the 41-page report, you'll see how significant the challenges are that we're faced with that site and how important the city felt that area get redeveloped. And There were some significant commitments made in that redevelopment plan to assist in that redevelopment, and we're asking for some of those today as part of our project. Lockwood, Chip, and Frank first got together a little over 2 years ago and started talking about a vision, which is what you're going to see today, which was Chip's vision that Frank and he have developed and vetted and moved forward over the last 2 years. There have been a lot of people that have been involved in that process on the private side on our development team. That includes Pinnacle Bank, Project Advocates, Phil Pioli Architecture out of San Francisco, Mark Foster Gage Architecture out of New York City, Avant Architecture, which is here local, OBI Creative, and Walker Parking, among others, that have provided valuable insight. So this is a well thought out, planned project, and Doug and Kurt are going to walk you through the intense thoughts and challenges that have been involved in coming up with the plan that you're going to see today, not to mention the costs of a lot of the infrastructure that you're going to see is being built. Additionally, we've been working over those 2 years with the city and really appreciate the valuable input, cooperation, collaboration with the mayor's office, city planning, public works, the law department, finance department. You know, it's really is, when you get a project of this magnitude and of this significance, it is a bit of a public-private partnership. And again, they've been very supportive in what we're doing, and we're appreciative of their efforts. So with that, I'm going to turn over maybe the sexier part of our presentation to Doug Halverson and Kurt Caesar.
Just a second, Jim.
Yes.
I forgot to ask upstairs in the pre-meeting. You brought it up about meeting with the neighbors. Neighbors to the north, the residential area. What comments did you get from them?
So they were involved in the first of the 2 Zoom meetings, and largely it was about there was a lot of education at that point because there hadn't been a lot of publicity about the project, and there hadn't been a lot of drawings and things that have since come to the public eye. So there was a lot of discussion about what the project looked like, what the traffic would look like, maybe some safety issues, whether there would be any connectivity to the bike trail, those type of things that were really neighborhood-focused concerns. I would tell you that from that meeting, I don't remember any negative comments necessarily about the project itself, what our buildings, what our use types were. I think that they were very supportive of that area being redeveloped. Obviously, it's a bit of an eyesore right now, and I think that they're looking forward to the redevelopment. They also wanted to make sure that Cass Street, from a traffic standpoint, wasn't going to be impacted, wouldn't be shut down during construction, and so there were questions like that. But a lot of it had to do with traffic issues, really, in the area.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Halverson. I'm a landscape architect with Olson here in the city, and it's at 2111 South 67th Street. As everybody's been talking about, we've had the neighborhood meetings, and this presentation that you're going to see is, I think you guys know more about this than most of the neighbors we were talking to at first, exactly what we've been talking about here. There's now new information that has been a little more public, and so some of this stuff I'm going to talk about is pretty basic. What is the property? Where is it? The grades and that kind of thing, just to get everybody on the same page. It's amazing that we've been working on this for 2 years. And the plan is very clean and simple. So, but the site is 40 acres, as he said.
Excuse me, Doug.
Yes.
Pull the microphone over.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Very. Thank you. It's 40 acres, and we're used to usually working in cornfields. We're completely surrounded by development, and every time you turn, you're between a rock and a hard place. So there's just so many things to think about, and there's just layers and layers of thought. But I'm gonna start with this image. I just love history. When I first saw this, I showed it to a colleague who was about my age at the office, and she said, "Oh my God, the Christmas tree." This is obviously Black Friday at Crossroads. To me, it just tells a story of how far we've come as a city. I mean, that was a great project at one time, but there's probably not a stick of a piece of grass or a tree or any kind of public amenities. It is truly a parking lot surrounding a brick building. Next one. So 60 years later, this is what we hope the corner of 72nd and Dodge looks like. I'm not going to get into this image right now because I want to show you the plan first, but the difference in the feel of the project is a result of all the work the planning department and the city and everybody else has done to get us to this point. So this is an aerial photograph of the existing Crossroads Mall, and the black dashed line shows us where the development is. You can see Target. Target is existing, but is not part of this project except in cooperation. They have easements, they have right-of-ways of visibility corridors and that kind of thing. The existing parking garage will remain, 2,200 stalls in that garage. Everything else will go, and I've labeled Charleston's just because I think people know where that is. Charleston's is not part of this project. It just demarks a landmark. So the 40 acres you see with Cass on the north, 72nd on the east, and Dodge on the south. This is kind of a detail we're getting into. It's a little hard to read, but basically this is the preliminary plat we are submitting. There's a number of lots, I believe there's 17. There's a couple outlots. I think the important thing that you'll see that we have reintroduced the urban grid to this 40 acres. So this is the site plan then. Again, the aerial photograph with Cass on the north. I'd like to talk about the entrance locations, I guess, right now. The number of entrances into this site will not change. Some of the locations and the importances of the entrance will change. For instance, the entrance coming from Cass will now line up with 75th Avenue, I believe it is. 74th Ave, thank you. Then there's the cross street of Chicago, the entrance off of 72nd by the existing parking garage. Before, I never used that entrance when I went to Crossroads because you just drove in there and it was a dead end into Dillard's. It now opens up the entire project. So there's Chicago Street and then what's the Capitol Street? Both Capitol Street and Chicago, if you envision someday the piece of property that we don't own that is to the west of this, the street system could continue on through. That's the beauty of reintroducing the grid. The areas that are in a kind of a blush color are the pedestrian connections, and the streets are labeled. So when I talk about a rock and a hard place, it'd be really easy if this were a flat site. Truly it would be. But we're a city of hills, and the elevation of the target store is basically at elevation 80. Charleston's is at 45. And you don't ever think about that, but when you drive by, you walked into the mall and you walked up some steps, and then you walked into Barnes & Noble and you walked down some steps, and then there was the Sears store, which was 2 stories, and then a 10 to 14 foot tall retaining wall west of that. We've had to make up and use and take advantage of all that grade change. So we've done this by looking at those numbers. The red numbers represent the elevations. So I'm just going to kind of drive you through the project right now. When you come in the main entrance, that's where it is today, and that's where it will remain, but it will be improved, and we'll talk about that a little bit. You drive from elevation 68 up to about 75. That whole street that the cursor is being shown is at elevation 75. Then if we go across the street on either Capitol or Chicago, that portion of the site drops about 6 feet to the west. Then it drops again down to the elevation 50 and 45. So what are we doing with all these grade changes? We're using it for underbuilding parking. Very convenient parking for the customer. We early on realized that the 2,200 stall parking garage, people in Omaha are probably not going to walk from that corner to the opposite corner where the restaurants are and think that's a great experience. So we have parking directly under all the buildings, not all the buildings. We're going to show you where it is. But this is a multi-story, multi-use project. Kurt will talk about that in a little bit. But the important thing is we are respecting the grades. We're opening it up to the world. There will be signalized intersections that line up properly. Dodge Street will be widened for double lefts into the project and out of the project. Next image, I think. So I talked about the urban grid. That's the public street system. All of them are handicap and physically accessible. But we're most proud of the next slide. We understand the word Crossroads came from the idea of 72nd crossing Dodge. Our version of the Crossroads is this pedestrian corridor connections. It's a very prominent pedestrian connections along all the public streets around in the whole area. But the main public T right through the middle, that's the heart of this project. And that's where we think people are going to gather and where we want them to have fun and make event spaces out of that.
Hey, Doug, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
So on all of the exits and entrances there, which ones will be lighted? I assume the one on Cass Street,
So there's a little symbol.
which my eyes are terrible right now, so I can't see it.
So there's a little traffic symbol right there, traffic light symbol. So that will be signalized. The one by the parking garage will be signalized. And of course, the one main entrance in.
So the one by the parking garage is signalized. That's not signalized now, is it?
I don't believe so. Is it? Is it?
It is?
Okay.
Well, I can't picture that for some reason. I know there's one at the intersection there.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That intersection?
Yeah. You're right, I've forgotten that.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Any other questions?
All right, we'll start talking a little bit about the vertical world here. Kurt Caesar, Holland Basham Architects, 16929 Bondison Street. I'm going to do my best here to go through each building and each lot here. There is a key on the right side of the screen here in case you get behind or looking forward. We'll start with Lot A. We've talked a little bit about this, but there's the existing Target as well as their parking lot directly to the south. The existing parking garage, letter B, holds about 2,200 parking stalls today. That will remain. There's a little yellow piece here you're seeing in the plan. That is a skywalk that currently exists and connects the parking garage to Target as well as the mall eventually. We're looking to retain that and find ways to reutilize that piece, that element to connect back into the I block, which we will get into a little bit more in this conversation. There are a couple of skywalks too that connect west that are existing off of the garage. We expect those likely to come down. Continuing to move west, letter C is 150,000 square feet of entertainment and fitness. 3 stories. It's a tall volume though. The program within that facility drives at a minimum 20-foot floor to floor, so that building will complement the existing parking garage to the east at likely a minimum of 60 feet. As we move westward, letter D is a commercial office space that can be phased in $200,000, or excuse me, not $200,000, 200,000 square feet phases. In its entirety, it's about 400,000 gross square feet, 7 floors. We have a slide after this that will talk a little bit more about the parking throughout the entire development, so we'll come back to that. As we continue westward, we get to the F block, which is a mixed-use block centralized around a parking garage. As Doug was just mentioning, one of the difficulties of this site is the overall grade that we have to contend with. That said, it has its benefits in certain locations, and one of those is utilizing parking in a garage form. So letter F in the middle of that is a 3-story parking garage. Works out quite well. We have a little over 20 feet in grade from northeast to southwest of this entire lot. That garage is 3 stories tall, and we can access each one of those stories directly off of the street network. So the east and highest deck is directly off of 74th Ave. The middle deck is accessible on the south side off of Chicago Street. And the lowest deck is accessible on the west end off of 75th Avenue. Each level there contains around 200 to 250 stalls for about 750 to 760 total stalls in that garage.
Do those levels connect to each other inside the parking garage, or is it just access from?
They can interconnect if we want them to. At this point in time, they're just level decks.
Right.
It is a little bit more efficient to do it this way in terms of getting stall per square foot. So one of the advantages of having grade allows us to do that.
Right.
So wrapping this building though, if you look at letter F here over to the side, we have 2 different program types on this block. One is senior living and the other is multifamily residential. So the senior living component, we're bearing a good portion of this parking garage, but the portions that are exposed, which would be this west end and the south end, we're trying to conceal the best that we can with the program that's going to be around and on top of that parking garage. So the senior living component, we see having a main entry that does go down to grade on the south end. There may be a drop area here, but it will be adjacent to one of the entries to the garage. But the majority of the remaining 200,000 plus square feet of senior living will be on top of the garage, up to 5 stories on top of the 3-story garage. As we move west, we're wrapping at grade, single-loaded multifamily product here And then as we get on top of the garage, there will be 3 to 4 stories of additional multifamily units totaling around 150 units on this west end of the parking garage. As we move south to the G block, I'm going to treat this conversation a little bit kind of like a layered cake. It's a little easier to talk about this one that way, as well as the I block. We'll start at the lowest layer, the base layer of that cake. Again, as we were talking on the F block, there's a tremendous amount of grade east to west. We're going down. So again, as Doug was saying, let's take advantage of that and let's park inside of that hill. This is primarily a multifamily product with retail on the middle floor, but there are 2 levels of parking underneath it. So one accessible at its lowest level on the west. There is also a second level above that, accessible from the south. And then on grade, as it connects to, as Doug was mentioning, kind of the Crossroads Plaza District, at grade here on the east, you have access to about 70,000 square feet of retail. And there may be a leasing office for the multifamily above on the north side of that block as well. Above that retail, there's planned to be 4 to 6 levels of multifamily units, ranging from 225 to 350 units. As we move east, you will see that, Doug mentioned too that at every moment here, we're really trying to enhance the pedestrian experience throughout the entire development. There's no vehicular traffic inside of this H block, which is the one we're going to talk about next because that's the primary retail center of the development. But on the north-south streets that flank both sides of the H block, 75th over here and 74th over here, just the little things. We've got on-street parking, but we also have bump outs we still need through traffic through these streets, but we do want to ease the pedestrian connection from one side to the other and enhance that, but also encourage individuals to go from east to west and connect through that plaza space. So the H block is a single story, about 75,000 square feet of retail divided into 3 different buildings. So there's 40,000 on the north side and 12,500 on both H2 and H3. There's about 60 plus feet in between the building, east, west, north, south, which is quite a large space. This entire development thrown up on a screen like this makes it look small, but I will assure you that that is a very large space that we're very excited about activating east to west. And we really think that this is going to be a place that everybody is going to want to come to and be at, and not just shop, but be engaged within this plaza space. As we move east, as Doug mentioned too, grade, we're starting to step up the hill a little bit more. The I block is another true mixed use block on the north side, and I'm going to flip to the next image here and talk off of this a little bit. This diagram portrays zero architecture at this point, so don't judge. It's really just a stacking diagram at this point, trying to give an understanding of what the mass and what the scale will look like throughout the entire development. So the I block, we just talked a little bit about the H block. That's the single-story retail, about 75,000 square feet there. You can see on the west here, the G block that we were just talking about, the multifamily stacked on top of the retail. As we move east, the I block, the north side of that I block, actually I'm going to start as a cake again. We're going to go all the way to the bottom. There is 1 level of parking underneath this lot, accessible by the existing entrance on the north side of Target that takes you down in and services the mall. We're going to reutilize that entrance and get you down into a parking lot that's underneath the I block. The first floor of that entire block will primarily be retail, along with the lobby and entrance of the hotel, which this hotel is the vertical piece you see on the north side of the I block. That will be about 150 keys and around 150 to 170,000 square feet of hospitality there, with maybe condos and a hospitality component on top of that. On the south side, you can see there's 4 stories of actually office stacked on top of the retail. That accounts to about 120,000 square feet of additional office space. That's about 40,000 square feet of floor. The I block also, it's hard to see in this view, so I'm going to flip back just for a second. The 2D view here, there's really a nice pocket plaza, I call it, for my own, that's my own definition, I guess, for this piece. But it's really a terminus on the east end for the Crossroads. We see this as really being an activated space that could have some form of digital media up on the second level up here. One of the retail spaces could have a 2-story retail walkout up here, utilize that space for themselves, or that could be a portion of the corporate office user that may walk out onto a roof deck piece that can activate not just the grade plane, but also the second level of this entire Crossroads piece. That same element happens on the west end. We didn't talk about it, but over at G2, you can see there's kind of a garden area on top there for the multifamily users above the retail. There's an opening in the building. We're schematically starting to show there vertically that connects visually both ends of that east-west plaza space, but on the second floor versus just the grade plane. Excuse me. To round out the development on the south side, we've got on the west end here 2 9,000 square foot retail buildings. There is about 20,000 square feet of retail here right off of Dodge Street. These are primarily dining facilities. That's the intent at this point. But we're taking that plaza space here and trying to grab and interact with Dodge Street as Dodge Street's moving east to west. We're bringing that plaza space down and trying to engage the pedestrian as well as vehicular traffic into the connection in the heart of the overall development. And then there is another 4,000 square foot restaurant piece dedicated to this lot over here on the east side of 74th Street. Yes.
I'd like to jump in here and talk a little bit about what it feels like as you're driving down the street, Dodge Street. We made a very purposeful decision. Show the green space there between the restaurants and the J buildings there. We are widening Dodge Street, and it's all going to the north. So we're, in essence, losing space. We could have very easily said, okay, we need more parking. We just don't want to do what we're doing in this picture. But Lockwood and Frank just have decided that it has got to look fabulous as you're driving down Dodge Street. And so that's why there's no head-in parking facing toward the street. There's a slope from the sidewalk and goes up to that area there, but you'll be able to still see into the project. And what I love about the massing that the architects and Lockwood have come up with, the center part is open, so when you come in the main entrance, you are looking over all this stuff, and there's just all this activity that you can see. And the site and the project will look much bigger and more important than it would if all the tall things were right up along the street or in the center. But the idea of connecting when you're driving down Dodge Street, you'll see all that activity of people outdoors eating, all the lights, all the action, umbrellas, just all that kind of stuff will want to make you turn in. And that's the logic of that. Same kind of green space is along Cass Street. Now, Cass Street is much higher, so those taller buildings are actually sitting 30, 40 feet down from the street. So, I'm sorry, 20 feet down from the street, the garages go that low. So they'll be more nestled in and won't, quote unquote, loom over the neighborhood. That's again why we left that, go to the site plan if you could, that green space behind the office building.
So with that, we'll round out the conversation on kind of the vertical and horizontal aspect of the project by talking a little bit about the parking, and engaged a little bit of that as we were walking through the development plan and some of the 3D massing models. But in its entirety, the development contains about 4,800 to 4,900 parking stalls. That accounts for 330 stalls on street, about 600 surface, and about 4,000 garage parking stalls. So if we just start back with the existing parking garage that exists today, that's a 2,200 stall garage that accounts for about half, a little less than half of the overall parking need of the entire development. So this diagram here indicates where there is parking, whether it's under a building or it's a part of a garage or it's surface or on street. This is all of the above. So there's the 2,200 parking stalls in the existing garage. As we move west, there's some undergrade parking potential underneath the office building that could extend underneath phase 2 of the building, but for now we're only accounting for about one level at about 160 cars. As we move west, we talked a little bit about this garage. This is 3 floors, roughly around 750 to 60 stalls. We talked about the G block. There's 2 stories of parking underneath this building that primarily serve the multifamily users above. Each level is around 200 stalls for 400 in total. There's on-street on both sides of the H block. The I block underneath the hospitality component, office, and retail, we're looking at about 230 parking stalls underneath that block as well. And this starts to show that access that currently exists on the north side of Target there that takes you down. Reutilizing that, obviously need to clean it up a little bit. It doesn't look real beautiful in its current state, but we'll clean that up, and that will be the entrance to that lower level garage. Everything south of Capitol Street here will be surface. We're looking at about 180 parking stalls here between the 2 retail pieces, about 60 stalls, and then an additional 190 on the east side of the main entrance of the development. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jude to talk a little bit about schedule and financing, unless there are any questions.
Kurt, I got a question for you. Your building F, where you have the senior living and then the multifamily living, what do you anticipate as the residents in the multifamily? Are you, pushing towards young professionals, families, young families, older families? What do you see?
Young professionals, yes, we've talked about young professionals, students as well that a strong percentage of the multifamily units are 1-beds and studios. So they're on the side of more affordable units. So we're trying to make sure that those individuals have a place here within the development.
Okay.
Is that accurate, Jude?
Correct. And on the senior,
This wouldn't be if I'm on a school board and I'm looking at a project like this, and I'm not looking at large families moving into this project with kids that we have to accommodate for.
fair question. Jude Beller, Lockwood Development, 12910 Pierce 68144. Correct. Majority of our units in the multifamily complex are junior 1-bedrooms and studios, mostly targeting that first income, maybe a grad student, somebody who is near their neighborhood where they want to work, perhaps at the hospital. So yeah, we're not targeting. We've got a few 2-bedroom units in there, no 3-bedroom, with the purpose of not necessarily trying to encourage a family. There might be a first family in there, but not somebody who's going to get to that school age to start burdening the school districts. Correct.
All right.
Senior family, touch on that just real quick. We have planned 220 units. That's a continuum of care in that particular asset, meaning we would have independent living units as well as assisted living, as well as some memory care units there as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt.
Go ahead, Jude.
So I just, again, Jude Beller, Lockwood Development, maybe just 3 more data points I'd like to share about the development. First, a little bit about the mission. Chip and Frank both have given us separate types of edicts of what they're looking for in this, and have challenged the designers as well as the development team to figure this out. Frank's main interest is a legacy asset that withstands time. He's a longtime developer in town. He's made great successes, and he wants to make sure this is something that he was remembered by. Chip's main thing is he wants a little bit of everything. for anybody here. So we strived hard and purposeful as how we laid out the site as well as the actual program. We threw a lot of numbers at you, but let me dumb this down just a little bit. 14% of that program is retail and restaurants. 10% is hotel. 10% is entertainment and fitness. So that's about 34% in what we'll call commerce and play, wellness. The other 30% is office, and about 36% of that is multifamily and senior family. So that's about a third of live, a third of work, and a third of play, which is your no truer mixed-use development can you get than those divisions. We're proud of that. We worked really hard at that. We commend our designers at helping us accomplish that. The hard work's ahead of us, but that's the plan today. Secondly, just real quick on schedule. We get a lot of questions about where we're at on schedule and what the likely timeframes will be. If we assume everything goes according to plan with respect to our entitlement discussions with the city and getting through city council and receiving final plat perhaps by end of the year, we would anticipate finishing our demolition, which is currently ongoing, by the beginning of summertime, May. We can start commencing late fall, perhaps in the grading and starting to provide the infrastructure, the new streets, the new sewers, all of the dry wet utilities into the site, and that would be finished early spring of 2022. And we would anticipate the earliest building permits could be pulled as somewhere around the summer of 2022, which means first occupancies could be seen late 2024. We had discussed real quick, there was a mention there about the Dodge Street improvement. Let me just touch a little deeper on that just to talk about timeframes. Part of this project includes a new dual turn lane going into the development to the north. So eastbound Dodge Street, currently there's a single lane that can sometimes stack up in the past as you try to get into the development. We've proposed adding a second turn lane to get more traffic into the development quicker through that light. That'd be eastbound Dodge turning north at the 74th and Dodge entrance. That's a major public improvement. We have to coordinate that obviously with Public Works. There's a lot of details that have to be sorted out on that, and that also will include the state of Nebraska. But what I'd like to mention is just importantly, that would be anticipated to be scheduled in the construction season of 2022. And we're purposeful of doing that so then as we get closer to occupancies, that doesn't drag. It's also very important to our partner, Target, that we coordinate how we keep their consumers going into the development and don't have shutdowns as much as possible. The third thing I want to mention on is budget. So I had the pleasure of sitting down with Mr. Krejci and Mr. James to explain to them the investment they're making and indicated that they're only spending $554 million. That is commendable for a number of different reasons, mostly because it's very hard to do. This is a very large project, and only a few in the city have accomplished that. So as we look at things that have happened in Midtown, Exarban Village, and down at the riverfront, those are not necessarily individuals that always accomplish that. Those are groups. So Mr. Krejci and James are taking something on, and that's not to, we like to commend them on that because it's a big task here. So out of the $554 million, what drives that cost? Yes, building costs, material supplies are all going up. But just touch for a second on the site. We explained to you what Mother Nature gave us, the surrounding public improvements, as well as the infill nature of this area. About 20% of that budget is what we'll call site control, site prep, getting the site ready for all the lateral things that need, paving, sidewalks, plazas, hardscapes, parking lots. But there's also other aspects to that. We had to assemble all this dirt. Mr. Krejci's owned the mall for a long time. We did have to negotiate to purchase the Best Buy and Applebee's next to him, as well as the Cass Street apartments in the rear. There was a one-time, a long-term lease. Sears had a long-term lease on their building. We had to work that out of the system. There are aspects with Target that we have to continue to work with them, to accommodate them, to make sure they're happy as we go through this. They've been supportive. But at the same time, they're also understand that they own their dirt and they need to make sure their consumers have a good experience as well. We had tenants in the mall we had to work out and find new homes for them, as well as residents that we helped find new homes from them as well through the process to get us here today. All of that accumulates extra costs, as well as bring in the 1.8 million square feet of new improvements. Existing today, just for reference, is about 1 million square feet when you include the mall and Best Buy, and this demonstrates about 1.8 million square feet. We are requesting public participation and assistance as we move forward on this. Again, this scale, really hard to do for one person, one company to take this on. It sort of takes a village. This is a civic scale project, no doubt about it. That's why it takes so long to get here. Accordingly, we have made a request, and Bridget will speak to it a little bit, but we are making a request for tax increment financing, $79.4 million. That will help us with those rebates over the next 15 years that help us offset the traditional items that TIF goes towards, acquisition, all of the abatement work, all of the grading work, all of the raising of the buildings, as well as all the new paving, landscaping, hardscaping, dry and wet utilities throughout, as well as public parking. We have, not in front of you today, but we have made mention of it in our application for the TIF, that we would anticipate making an application for an enhanced employment area as well, EEA. Again, that is mentioned. We would anticipate that this project, through extra levy on retail sales and restaurant sales, as well as hotel sales, could produce up to $60 million of potential rebate as well. But the TIF, with the size of this project and the scale of it, it'd be very, very difficult, if not, quite frankly, impossible to do this if we wouldn't request and receive the public assistance in the tax increment financing. I think you've seen the report. We have today about $13.4 million of assessed value in the base valuation that exists today that go to the taxing jurisdictions. With Mr. Krejci's and Mr. James's investment of $554 million, we anticipate that that value would increase to $430 million, creating an increment in the neighborhood of $418 million. That could be available to rebate for the eligible costs that we've explained. I'll be happy to talk to any about the TIF. Maybe we'll let Bridget present on that, but if there's any questions now about anything I said, I'm happy to take them.
Just one quick question for you. Are the partners going to own all of the buildings and then lease back? Particularly, I'm thinking the hotel and senior living. Are you going to actually own those buildings?
So, fair question. One of the reasons why we're making the application today for the entirety is because Frank and Chip are both long-term owners, and they intend to be. So they would like to participate in every one of the projects. Therefore, that's caused us to say, let's go at this as a district and present our request for public assistance in that funding. When it comes to certain assets, though, both of them are pretty disciplined about what they do well and what they don't do well. And so senior family specifically and hotel are really operating assets more than they are real estate investments. So to do those appropriately, we would need to team with an operator who's a professional at running running that type of business. So we would anticipate actually partnering on both of those assets. So we'd like to stay involved. They would like to stay involved in every one of the assets as an ownership. But those particular two, we would defer to a professional to kind of lead that for us.
To manage particularly?
That's correct.
Yeah. So in your budget here, you've got $335 million and change allocated to direct construction costs, parking and what have you. Does that include an estimate on what those two buildings, particularly the senior living and the hotel, might cost?
Those do, yes.
Those numbers include the hotel and the senior?
That is correct.
Okay.
So, yeah, the direct costs include every one of the buildings that you've seen, the square footage that's on the picture today. So
okay. Thank you.
All of them are included.
Any other questions for Jude? Okay,
Thank you.
Bridget, did you want to take this time? Okay, come up and talk about the TIF.
Afternoon. Bridget Hadley, City Planning. Just want to say, on behalf of the city, we are glad to be at this point. Just kind of reiterating a lot of the historical context and the fact that the city did reach out over 10 years ago to indicate its interest in seeing this site redevelop. And so I want to just kind of talk about the why is TIF involved, as well as, of course, why the city would offer it from a historical context. So as I said, we reached out saying, yes, we wanted to be involved. We wanted to see this site redeveloped. It's a significant part of the city. The city then followed up in 2011 and approved a CRA, and that signaled its sincerity as well as determination to assist the site with redevelopment through the use of incentives that it offers. And I'm going to set this here, and I'll come back to it later. When I go into talking a little bit more about the TIF itself. So signaled its sincerity and determination in 2011 and then turned around in 2013, and the city planning department worked together to put together an area redevelopment plan for the Crossroads area, not just the site, but in general the area. And in that Crossroads area redevelopment plan, it indicated the various goals and objectives of how the general area should be redeveloped. So again, trying to set the framework for why we are interested in this area, as well as if we're interested in it with sincerity, then we're going, and we have incentives, we're going to bring those incentives to the table. I would say that TIF, of course, was thought about, and TIF is one of the incentives that the city has at its disposal, and I think that's key to remember. It's at its disposal to encourage and incentivize redevelopment. It doesn't have to always use it. There is a section in the area redevelopment plan, the Crossroads one, that speaks to why the city would pursue an opportunity to assist with the redevelopment, and I'm going to read that. A redevelopment in this area and use its incentive. It says that the value of land is directly proportional to higher density and a higher floor area ratio. As the developable area increases, so does the land value. A higher tax base per acre also provides for a higher quality of infrastructure and services. As a strategy for achieving a more sustainable fiscal outlook, higher density redevelopment is required for certain parts of the city. Such areas should be located strategically in nodes and achieve a higher standard of design quality to more satisfactorily provide for the higher design of density, buildings, and activities. The Crossroads redevelopment area is one such node with a central strategic location and significant capacity for increased density. As I was kind of digging through and looking at our past, how we got here, I saw that and I thought, you know, that is very important, because when we use TIF, TIF is for various reasons. Of course, to help, as I mentioned, encourage private investment, the redevelopment of areas that are in need, but it's also to enhance tax bases. This particular property was a struggling mall over 10 years ago, and the property was declining in its valuation. A decline in valuation means a decline in tax value. So again, why the city would be very interested in seeing this particular property redevelop. And so therefore, this particular tool, TIF, was considered. And as Jude mentioned, back when we designated this area as a community redevelopment area, the enhanced employment area was also considered. So all of those tools were considered over 10 years ago. So again, no surprise that the city, or shouldn't be any surprise that the city would be interested in using its incentives. So to move on to TIF, redevelopment does occur around various parts of Omaha without the help of incentives offered by the city. So I'm moving to that but for. So yes, it does occur, and the city is not involved in all redevelopment projects or all projects. It's only the projects that are going to meet the master plan, comply with the community development law, because that's what authorizes a community redevelopment authority such as the City of Omaha to utilize TIF, as well as some other redevelopment goals that the city has. There's infill redevelopment and all those kinds of goals. So when all those things come together and are presented to the city in an TIF application, then the city has the opportunity to offer its incentives. So when a TIF project is proposed, or excuse me, when a TIF project as proposed in a TIF application is presented to the city that complies, again, with all of those things, master plan, law, and for redevelopment, it's at that time that the city will deem it important and a project that would not occur unless the city were to be involved and utilize and extend its incentives. I know a lot of people would say that the project's going to happen, or a project is going to happen there. Well, here we are 10 years later, and a project has not happened. A project could have happened if Mr. Krejci so desired. However, again, it's the master plan, it's all of the goals that the city has. It needs to be a certain project, meet certain specificity. And as you have been presented by the Lockwood team, this particular project is meeting that, all of those things, the density, improving the tax base. So this is a project we would want to see and use our incentives for. Anything less? No. And so I think the fact that we're 10 years later indicates, no, this project would not have happened. So now to move to this, TIF is a developer finance tool, and that is how Omaha has chosen to utilize tax increment financing, which means a developer does not receive any funding initially from the city to construct their project. The TIF funding is actually earned. The developer will secure financing from a bank or a lending institution in the amount of the TIF, the tax increment financing, expected to be generated over a 15-year period by that proposed project. So looking at this model, and I would just add to anyone who's listening, we do have a TIF website, a plug for our TIF website. It is available with all kinds of information for you to use. This particular basic TIF model is out there. And for more details, you can call me later and I can go over anything that's not clear. But the way TIF works is this. In this area before the beginning of TIF, this is the inception of a project, ideation stage, TIF approval application, TIF approval stage. All of that is happening before the TIF term occurs. This green area represents the base tax revenue, what the property is valued at. And this revenue is what goes to the current taxing jurisdictions. So as you see, after ideation and they bring the project to us, and sometimes when they bring the project to the city and having the opportunity to partner, we may get an even better project, especially when we're offering the incentive. So the project is approved, the construction begins. As you can see, the value, this is the tax revenue, the tax revenue is still down here. As that construction continues, the revenues will start to increase. But keep in mind, the construction is still happening in this area. There are not a lot of tax revenues, new tax revenues, which represents the blue, that have come in yet. In most cases, most projects take about 2 years to complete. And it's only after that time period that the rebate, as Jude mentioned, of the tax revenues start to come in. So again, the developer has to secure their financing to construct that project up front. There are no tax revenues that are coming in right away. So the risk is truly on them. So again, it's in this area where they have secured their financing, they have produced the project, and it's in this area generally where the project is complete and stabilized, and the assessors have placed a full value on the project, and the revenues, the TIF is coming in to pay back the bank loan that they had secured. So that's in general how the TIF works. And I will just kind of leave that up just to kind of marinate. That's the basic TIF model across the country. Slight variations on how it might look, where things may start, but if you look across the country, if you Google it, this is the basic TIF model. So Omaha is not that unique. With that, I would just say that, so the TIF committee did approve an application for the TIF of the $79.4 million, which does include enough for capitalized interest and accrued interest. It is about 14 or a little over 14% of the investment, so helping to fund the $553 million of investment. And as Jude said, the increment is about $419 million that is anticipated to be generated upon completion of the proposed project. The typical TIF eligible uses are typical and traditional that we have approved, such as acquisition, site work, infrastructure, and plaza work area, pre-development, architectural and engineering costs, professional design costs, and construction contingency costs. And when I say site development, if I can find it, we're talking about demolition, demolition and preparation in the mall area. So lots of public improvement work that's going to be happening on the site is what this TIF is going to go for. So with that, I will ask for your approval, and I am here to answer any other questions.
Bridget, I've got just a question based on your illustration here and your timeline that you're looking at here. So in this case, Jude, I think had made reference to the fact that they wouldn't really start going vertical until 2024.
22.
Is that accurate, roughly? Okay, so your first building won't be occupied till sometime 2024, 25. So the revenues aren't going to start coming in for 3 or 4 years from now. So in your illustration, that construction period is kind of extended over, compared to this model that you've got here. Mm-hmm. So who's required? So when will the note be funded then for the TIF money that's going to be allocated?
So again, it's up to the project owner, developer, to secure their own financing. So it's based on their relationship with their bank on how that will be structured. And I won't try to speak to this particular situation, but it's that bank relationship. So again, the city is not a party to any of those financing relationships. It is not. So it's totally up to that project owner to secure that financing and work out those payments. So in that case, when the construction period is strung out a little further along, that just means this curve won't start until maybe further back here. But that is why we allow for capitalized interest.
For 2 years, right?
Typically for 2 years. Now we know this one will be a little bit longer. But as they do start, I think Jude mentioned that the first project will go into the ground in 2022. So, and that is just next year. So as construction does begin and the assessors do see that, they can account for that, and any increase in value at that site will result in new tax revenues, so some of this blue. So as they get some, they can start paying that financing back. But the majority would not come until toward the end of the construction.
Then I'm going to throw you a little curveball here, and I don't mean to, and apologize, but just for illustration purposes. So I look at another mall in Omaha that's kind of declining right now, and that's Oakview Mall. Okay. If a developer came in and wanted to redevelop it based on the same model maybe that we're looking at with Crossroads, would they qualify for TIF?
At this point, no, and that is because it all starts with a community redevelopment area designation. So as I mentioned with this, we knew that we wanted to assist with the financing or the redevelopment of this project. So the first thing we had to do was designate this as a CRA. And there's certain criteria that will allow an area to be designated. we have not been asked and we have not looked at that area, but we have a general idea based on the demographics of the city, as well as what the physical conditions of general areas look like. Certain areas just wouldn't qualify. So at this point in time, that area is not in a community redevelopment area, so therefore TIF would not apply.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Come on down, sir. Give your name and address, please.
Hello, everyone. Marty Hosking, 7501 Cass Street. Very much a proponent of this project, very excited about the project. I was really touched when in the TV interview, I don't know if it was Chip or Frank, responded to the concern that one of the interviewers had that there'd be a bunch of people hanging out and protesting and causing all sorts of commotion in this new mall at 72nd and Dodge. And the response that I really liked was that, yes, we want everyone to be here. We want people to protest, to mourn, to celebrate. This is for the community. And so I was so excited to hear that. I've lived in a number of different cities. I did real estate in Washington, D.C. area, have been around a lot of developers and development in other cities. And I moved back to my hometown because I want to be a part of and support the kind of growth that I've seen in other cities. This is really positive. And it's on that note that I would like to commend the whole group for the eyes that they presented, the way they presented the project. Jude and the attorney, and then even Bridget's explanation of the TIF financing. This is one of the greatest opportunities that Omaha has had historically, perhaps ever, to reverse a trend of urban sprawl that we have seen other cities suffer from. We're always little Omaha, you know, it couldn't happen to us. But it is happening to us, and I think this gives us an opportunity to reverse sprawl. That as those of us who studied a little bit know that the reason for sprawl, there's reasons for that. Some of the original reasons were underlaid by racism, but there were other reasons as well. And it tended to disconnect the community, this kind of sprawl that happened over the years. The dead mall effect is still occurring because we now have another dead mall, Mr. Pate. And so can we reverse that? And this is a real positive action on the city's part and so many other people's part to reverse that action that is hurting cities where you get to the point of sprawl where it's out of control. This also is a positive support for an integration of our community more. And it's super important to me and to many of us that we be among people of every different background and economic level. That we create a city, there's a real community. So this has an opportunity to be it can be many things, but one of the things that we shouldn't forget, it's going to hopefully bring the city together. It'll reverse the kind of negativity of urban sprawl where, as someone said earlier, you're used to working in cornfields. Well, we're not supposed to be used to working in cornfields. If we're building communities, we're supposed to be used to working in this atmosphere. And I noticed, and I mean this in good fun, but some of you didn't even know where the stoplights were around that area. So let's get to know the center part of our city, and I want to introduce you to it. When I moved back to Omaha, it was my goal to be a part of it. So I live on Cass Street. I live right, in fact, I might have some headlights facing my garage coming off of 75th Avenue going north. That's quite all right with me. So I'm a huge positive proponent of this, and I want to thank you for all the work that everybody has done so far and the consideration that people are truly giving to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? You're going to be an opponent too, Marty, or did you forget something?
Marty Hosking, 7501 Cass. I'm not a full proponent, but I thought it would be more appropriate to mention some of the concerns that I have that we can take an opportunity to really look at. And I don't want to assume that they haven't already been considered. I'm certainly not the most knowledgeable about the project. I'm busy running my own real estate business. So Thankfully, I've got a staff now, and I'm growing my business that I can be here and be a part of this. So I'm so grateful, even in that regard. So please take my comments not as a criticism, but as actually just serious questions about how we can better take advantage of this opportunity. So it's not to bash the project, to say, is there ways that we can make it better? First of all, I want to note that the original project that Mr. Kretschy and forget the other developer's name.
Chip James?
Yates, Mr. Yates, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I was really excited when I saw their drawings included a better interconnection with the north side of the project around Cass and that neighborhood. I realize there's financial economic concerns where you have to draw the line somewhere. I get that. I want to propose that we draw the line just a little bit farther north. In other words, Cass Street right now is a real danger to pedestrians and people living in that neighborhood. I know because I hear the accidents that happen about every 2 months. I hear the screech, I hear the crash, and I pray that no one got killed or seriously injured. On one occasion, was it 2 years ago now, someone was killed. 3 people were killed. And I heard that last speeding motorcycle the last time that person ever drove a motorcycle right past my house. So what I want to do is say, let's just slow it down and let's ask the developers a little bit more about, like, where's your margin of profit here? Let's look at the numbers really clearly, because if I were a developer and I knew that I could integrate this better with the neighborhood around Cass Street, like slowing it down, creating the boulevard effect that had been originally proposed by Yates, better crossing areas, safer crossing areas. This is, as a developer, I would be willing to give up a little bit of my profit for the betterment of the city. And if the developer is not able or willing to do that, I think it's up to us as a city to say, we want you to do a little more because there's people who are living here. I don't want this to be an island. It really does need to be connected to the people to the north. And we have to do that such that it's safe access, more access, and that the idea of Cass Street, I think it's really going to change. I think we'll all agree that Cass Street will be considered something quite different at that time. Right now, it's an ancillary to Dodge Street, not a thoroughly necessary street to have 3 lanes, you know, the way it does now, or 4 lanes, actually. So this is what I wanted to suggest to the city, that we take an opportunity to re-examine Cass Street while we're doing this, such that we can maybe integrate it. Not to bash their project, not to criticize them, but to see how we can work together and take advantage of it as a city. Because that street really needs to be looked at and considered for the long term, and especially what development might occur across Cass Street. So I want to consider that one. And the other one is, the question I have is, how many people are going to own the project? I think it's important for you guys to consider how many owners there are going to be here. As far as I can tell, there's only going to be 1 owner. And I want to encourage us as we grow our city to have increased multiple owners in every area. And one of the ways of doing that, and of course I'm in residential real estate, would be to consider the value of condominiums or cooperative units of ownership in here, not just apartments. So I will bug you more about this later when there's other opportunities to talk about it, but I wanted just to raise that value in our city, that we not have just 1 owner, but we have community develops more solidly around equity ownership, not just rentals. That's very, very transient, and I'm concerned about the transientness of so many apartments and not enough ownership. And then, yeah, I think that's actually everything. So thank you very much for your time.
All right, Marty, thank you. Any other opponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Kurt or Jude, did you want to take an opportunity to talk about Marty's concerns, or?
Thank you, Jude Beller, Lockwood Development. First off, thank you, Marty, for both support as well as some critiques we can consider. We appreciate that. I think we spoke before at one of the neighborhood meetings, so good to see you again. Just real quick on that last point, we're not insensitive to the potential of home ownership in this development. We have looked at condominium ownership on, perhaps, I think Kurt mentioned it just briefly, adding something above the hotel and utilizing some space there to encourage people to, to invest in the neighborhood as well. I don't know if that was the sole point of his comment in terms of who else could be owners, but as I mentioned, though, Chip and Frank do intend to want to participate in this investment, mostly to control it, to make sure it ends the way they want it to. They also believe it's going to be a solid investment for themselves and their portfolios. But I love the homeownership comment. There's a reason we're putting 36% of this with multifamily units, senior family units. That does make sure there is a nightlife and that people are participating and watching over how things go in terms of safety. And it's not just a retail traffic, if you will, coming in during the daytime. So I'll speak to that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from the board?
I just want to make just a couple comments. First of all, I want to commend the development team for the work you guys have done, and commend the owners and both owners for the commitment that they're making to this city in terms of this development. This is a long time coming. It's been needed for a long time. The vision that you guys have laid out here, I think, is tremendous. We've been very patient, obviously, as a city, waiting for this corner to be redeveloped, and what we're seeing here today, I think, is worth waiting for. So I just wanted to make that comment publicly, and please pass on my thanks to the owners of the development as well. But the development team should be commended for the work that you guys have done on this, so just want to make that comment.
Any others? I just want to say real quick about, I love this project. Tiff, using Tiff on projects like this, look around the city of Omaha. Downtown, Midtown, South Omaha, North Omaha. If not for Tiff and a large number of projects, there would still be dilapidated buildings sitting around with a property tax revenue of very little. And here we are, since I've been on the board, there's getting a lot of TIF projects are getting mature and ready to come off and come on at full tax value. It's revitalized our city. Crossroads has been sitting there for kind of 10 years as almost like a dead zone. And if not for TIF, this wouldn't be taking place. So congratulate the developers and the entire team on the work that you're doing.
I just want to add to what Greg said, that we just got a report on 2019, I guess, TIF, and a couple statistics really stood out to me in that, and I think that's helpful, especially for the public who doesn't really necessarily understand how this works. It is an investment by the city in the specific things that are normally the public works and things like that, and it's also demolition and some other qualified expenses. But what happens is at the end of that 15-year period, there is between a 3,000% and a 5,000% increase in the tax revenue that's derived from that property. And that's historically, we looked at the report today, for the last 15 years. And so it's a wonderful vehicle that somebody should be commended for inventing it years ago. Cities all over this country are able to use it to revitalize their infrastructure that in a lot of cases has been decaying, just like our Crossroads had. So, and again, also commend the developers for their investment in this city.
Thank you, Dave. Eric.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say on behalf of the city, from the mayor's office to all the different departments, we've been excited to work with the development team on the proposed project. We've been working with them for a while, and we will continue to work through the issues laid out in the recommendation report and throughout the entire entitlement process, and as it continues on to building permits and getting these buildings constructed. So it's very exciting. I just wanted to express that, it's pretty special to be able to work on these important projects, and we're looking forward to continue those conversations and working the detailed items that are listed in the recommendation report. I'm not going to go over much of those unless you have any specific questions, because there are multiple pages, multiple elements. I do want to point out that when the final plat comes back to planning board, we will keep it on the public hearing just because the mixed-use development agreement, there's still some work to do as far as refinement of that, whether it's related to potential waivers of certain zoning code elements, whether it's related to signage. So, you know, this is a detailed review, and as we continue to work with them, that will continue through the public process. So I just wanted to point that out. I don't have anything specific to summarize or add, so unless you have any questions, I can read my recommendation report.
Okay.
First, for item number 6, that's a quick and easy one. Staff recommends approval. That's for the TIF.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you record the vote, please?
Pate?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Franklin? Yes. Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
I've got several elements related to number 7. There are a couple of subdivision Chapter 53 waivers that are included. So I'll just read through these, and if you have any specific questions on any of them, let me know. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning from R1, R8, LC, and GC to MU, subject to submittal of an acceptable final mixed-use development plan in agreement with the final plat submittal. Approval of the repeal of the MCC overlay district. Approval of the ACI 2 overlay district. Approval of the waiver to section 5399 sidewalks for the south side of Chicago Street abutting lot 9. Approval of the waiver to section 53914 Green Corner, subject to providing an alternative location for the Green Corner at 74th and Dodge Street. Approval of the preliminary plat, subject to the 16 conditions in the recommendation report. I believe if you so wish, you can make a recommendation as stated by city staff. Jennifer, would that be acceptable? If you so choose to recommend approval as listed, you can do so.
Okay.
I would make an approval as listed.
We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you record the vote?
Moore?
Yes.
Morris? Yes. Franklin? Yes. Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Agenda item number 13, case C10-18-15, C10-21-16. Applicant Jeffrey Silver. Request major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for West Farm, along with rezoning from R7 and MU to MU. Location southwest of 144th Street and West Dodge Road. And do we have the applicant here?
Yes, Joe Flaxbeard with Lamper and Earson, 14710 West Dodge Road, here on behalf of the applicant, Applied Underwriters. I'm also joined with Bart Emanuel from Applied Underwriters here in the audience with me. We're here today for another major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for West Farm, part of the Heartwood Preserve project. Here a couple months ago, probably with a previous amendment. We've gone through this process a few times with the city as different owners come into the project, different projects kind of mature and evolve and come online here. So what we're specifically here today to address in the amendment, and I realize my red marker is not showing up as vibrant as I was hoping, but I'm going to trace it with my finger. We've got this area highlighted here. That's really the subject property for the major amendment that we're here for today. You've heard in previous presentations on this project us referring to the row or the town center portion of the project. That's really this mega block here, I'd call it, in the center there. We've got 147th Street that's being dedicated as part of Replat 7 that we're coordinating some final plat signatures with the city on. And also Heartwood Row coming through here. It's kind of that main commercial mixed-use street through the development. The additional area here, immediately north of Miller North High School, this block has always been contemplated as multi-family housing. Still is, that's what is being proposed here. We're just bringing this in a mixed-use district as a function of getting the unit counts that this project needs within here. So really, the nature of the amendment that we have before you here today is some changes to the density allocations from the original mixed-use plan, and then some changes to some of the site development regulations. We reviewed the city's recommendation report. We've had discussions with the city on this particular amendment, aware of the traffic study comment. We're actively working on that. Our hope is within the next week or two that we have a draft updated traffic study to share and coordinate with the city there. I understand that there have been some concerns about maybe the city reviewing that traffic study when it's available, just making sure that we're touching that from some adjacent property owners. But other than that, I'm here to answer any questions.
So I've got a question with regards to that. I think that's it's very, very important, obviously, that you communicate to all the stakeholders in the area about the changes that you're proposing to make. Maybe minor, maybe not, I don't know. But the traffic study is very, very important, I think, to everybody. And I know just because I'm somewhat affiliated with the Millard School District, we have not been notified at all. Millard North is right next door to this proposed change that you're making here. Have not been notified whatsoever about the impact that these changes might make to the overall traffic in this. And I think it would be in everyone's best interest if you could share that information prior to coming to us and asking for approval for this change. So, and I think the neighbors probably deserve the same interest as the school district would, and anybody else that has a stake in this. So I've got some concerns that we haven't heard about this until today. Obviously, the city has, I think, maybe, but would you be willing to lay this over?
I'll probably call Bart Emanuel up here from Applied Underwriters on that.
Bart Emanuel, Applied Underwriters, Harwood Preserve, 10805 Old Mill Road. Yeah, if it needs to be laid over, like Joe addressed just a moment ago, that we are in the process of completing that traffic study because we feel also that it's very important that everybody know where we're at, the cars, the amount of traffic that's going to be there. In regards to the neighborhood, I've been in touch with the folks at Harvey Oaks on numerous occasions. They've reached out to me, and we've discussed, doing a Zoom call on a couple different occasions, but it never materialized for some reason or not, but it never happened. But I'd be more than happy to meet with any concerned citizens, the neighborhoods, Millard North, whatever the people in the neighborhood. What's that?
The other landowners in the project or lot owners?
Yeah.
Nobody has reached out to us yet, but again, we just brought this forward. We've been working on, and Eric knows we've been discussing this for 6-8 months or something like that. We brought it up some time ago when the first apartment group here came to us and expanded their unit count. We had a small discussion about it at that time, but that's the extent of it at this point.
Just one point, don't mean to, I guess I'm going to just say, it's your responsibility to reach out to the neighbors when you do that, not their responsibility.
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, I understand that fully.
I figured you did, but the way you said it, I thought you
No, I quite honestly have been kind of waiting on this, the traffic study.
Okay.
Because I wanted to be able to go to them with numbers and facts as opposed to hyperbole,
You bet. All right,
So.
Bart.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other Joe, were you done?
I am, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents wishing to speak?
Good afternoon, Cassie Paven, 10340 North 84th Street, representing CWG HQ LLC. We would just ask the planning board to lay this over so we could get more information. We first found out about this late last night and are just as a vested property owner within the development, excited about the future of the development, but also just want to better understand what is actually occurring with the increase, particular in the commercial square footage, and just as not receiving any sort of notification, and I know that's typically pretty customary when you go through these things, we would just ask for a layover.
Okay, thank you, Cassie. Any other opponents?
Good afternoon. I'm Paul Ellefson of Fitzgerald Shore Law Firm. I represent West Farm RE LLC, which is the lessor of the Onyx Automotive building that was constructed there in the northwest corner of the property. I echo Mr. Pate's concern and the concern of the fine lady there. Basically, we are a property owner. We want this to succeed, but this is a big surprise and a radical potential increase in density. And I echo the concerns of Mr. Pate as it relates to the school. The traffic study is a very significant concern, and we'd like to know more about these matters and request basically the same thing, that it be laid over so we can have some communication.
Okay.
Any questions?
Paul, just personal question. Did you used to represent Phil Wade?
I did.
I thought so. I thought so. Phil Wade.
He's a hell of a guy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other opponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Did you, Bart or Joe, did you want to come back and address anything, or are you okay with, I think you can see where we're headed here.
Yeah, we can see where you're headed, and like I stated before, we're wrapping up that updated traffic study. We'll be sending that to the city and coordinating with that, and we'll share that information with everybody here prior to next meeting.
Just for the record, give your name and address.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Joe Flaxbeard, Lampard Nearson, 14710 West Dodge Road.
Okay,
Thanks.
you, Joe. All right. Any additional comments or questions from the board? Eric.
Yeah, so obviously we had a staff recommendation for approval, but staff is fully on board with the layover for further coordination with the neighborhood or the neighbors. So I would, echo that, and staff would recommend layover.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Move for layover.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you please record the vote?
Moore? Yes. Morris?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved, layover.
Okay. Agenda item number 14, case C10-21-17, C10-21-18, C11-21-25. Applicant Matt Dwyer. Request rezoning from R7 to TOD2 MUR with approval of a PUR plan unit redevelopment, along with repeal of the ACI 2 Area of Civic Importance Overlay District. Location northwest of 33rd and Jones Street. And we hear from the applicant, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brent Beller, 1140 West Center Road. I'm appearing on behalf of the project applicant 33 Jones LLC. You all probably remember this particular project. It was before you, obviously, for Tiff back in November. This is the zoning part of this. I had planned to go through in detail everything that's happened to kind of recount that, and I can to the extent you want me to, or I could just jump to what it is before you today, which is the TOD zoning.
That's fine.
For a lot of us, the TOD zoning, the transportation-oriented district, this is the first one here in the city of Omaha. So for a lot of folks that are on the stakeholders, a lot of the planning staff and residents and all the public hearings, you all approving that along with city council, to get to this point and actually having a project that is utilizing this zoning district is a big deal, because it shows that from a master planning and how we all work together, we can make projects like this one feasible. So just to recap, this is a multifamily residential project, 55 market rate apartments, 8 two-bedroom, and then the rest are studio 1-bedroom units. Just to real briefly, the project, here's Jones Street, here's 33rd Street, Turner Park Boulevard, and then Dewey Park to the north. We have residential, obviously, on the east, bounded by Leavenworth Street on the south. with respect to this project and the zoning and the land use aspect of the project, transportation-oriented district, the goal of this district and these new districts will be to utilize and emphasize and activate pedestrians and utilizing public transportation. So with that, there's a bunch of restrictions and ways that we design these projects so that they fit that, and we utilize public transportation. One of the things that you do is, for instance, in TOD, we'll take 50% of the parking that's available. So traditionally, if we were still zoned R7, we would have 75 parking spaces here. What's being proposed, though, and I'm going to show you what you all have seen before, is we'll have 38 parking spaces along both 33rd Street, and then we're also installing parking spaces along Jones Street, both on the north and the south end, to make that feasible in our project. And sorry, this isn't coming up in color, but this line on the east side, this is the existing property line. We're shifting that property line to the west to accommodate and to get in those additional parking spaces. In addition, they're going to go north, cutting into the city's property a little bit. But the goal is, again, to emphasize that we want folks to use public transportation. We want pedestrians to walk to Midtown Crossing, Blackstone District, that sort of thing. And also, if you are a bike advocate, which I'm one of those, there couldn't be a better place to live, because both Turner Park Boulevard has a bike lane all the way down. 33rd Street has a bike lane. Leavenworth was one of the first streets here in Omaha that has a bike lane. So everything about this particular project, and to the city's credit in utilizing this program, this is how you get folks to emphasize and to use public transportation. We are very cognizant that some of the neighbors are concerned about the lack thereof of parking, but to the gentleman that spoke on the last project about urban and urban sprawl and getting out to the suburbs, another way you fight that is you do infill projects. So this is a project that is just under a half acre in size, and we'll have 55 units. But this is not going to be something that is just going to be a one and done. I think this is the future for cities like Omaha that have experienced urban sprawl. This is how you get people to come back here. We've had a lot of input on this project, and I know you all know this because you're at the Tiff hearing, and you heard a lot of people talk about, number one, why are we having Tiff? Number two, what is affordable? Number three, parking, and then the height of this particular project. Every aspect of this project complies with the TOD zoning, except for, number one, our balconies will be 48 inches instead of 24. We're going to have a side setback here of less than 5 feet. We need 5 feet, and the same is true over here. And then also we're going to have some of our folks exit onto this public sidewalk that will be on the north and west. But otherwise, every aspect from a zoning perspective complies with the code, the new TOT zone. But we've faced a lot of backlash, and we suspect we'll probably have more of that as we move to city council and we talk more about TIF and whatnot. But from a land use perspective, I think this is a win, because as a city, we passed this new zoning district, and here's a project that fulfills almost every requirement of it. So we're excited about it. I'm here to answer any questions about the zoning, and to the extent we want to talk about TIF or affordability, I'm happy to do that. But obviously that's not what's on the agenda today, though I'm happy to do that. So with that, here for any questions, and appreciate your consideration as always.
Okay. Thank you. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Proponents? Okay.
Hello, Spencer Lombardo, 1303 South 72nd Street, representing Pure Properties LLC. We own a lot of the property adjacent to the north of this project, 3318, 3314, 3310, and 3308 Jackson, as well as 563 South 34th Street. So basically, almost the entire block to the north of this project. We're in full support of this project. As a property owner in the neighborhood that would be most directly affected by the project, we want to state on the record our full support of it. We think it'll be great for the neighborhood and for the city of Omaha. And the property that we own in the neighborhood, we plan to redevelop in the future. And we have the resource to do that. And we are going to be looking at this project as an example. We don't find a lot of people at the council meetings talk about traffic problems and parking problems, and I don't find any issues with this and our continued operation of our rental properties that we have there. I think it'll only be a positive for our properties, and like I said, an example for future growth when we go to redevelop our land across the street. So thank you for your time, and wanted to express my support for the project.
Thank you, Spencer. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Additional comments, questions from the board? Eric.
Yeah, so Brent mentioned several of the items in the recommendation report. This is our first TOD rezoning, so it's good to have one, pretty fresh off the approval here a couple of months ago of the new code language. So as expected, once projects were going to come in, we anticipated, working through the new code and seeing where real projects, how they fit in. And this one was really close to full compliance with TOD, but there was just those few items that are the reasoning for the PUR. So staff is supportive of those waivers. Otherwise, the project in whole complies with all the elements of TOD, including bike parking, long-term bike parking, and other elements. We do have a repeal of the ACI with this project because those higher standards are built into the TOD code and oftentimes enhanced with the TOD code. There are the 38 on-street parking stalls. And with that being said, staff is recommending approval of the rezoning from R7 ACI 1PL to TOD 2 MUR, approval of the repeal of the ACI 1 overlay district, approval of the PUR subject to submittal of final plans prior to forwarding to City Council.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Do we have a motion?
A motion for approval of the rezoning from R7 ACI 1 PL to TOD 2 MUR, approval of the repeal of the ACI 1 Area of Civic Importance Overlay District, approval of the PUR subject to submittal of acceptable final plans before forwarding to City Council.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you record the vote, please?
Franklin?
Yes.
Solongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Moore? Yes. Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay, before we go on to officer elections, let's, the minutes from December's pre-meeting. Do we have a motion for approval?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you record the vote?
Franklin?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Abstain.
Sotolongo?
Abstain.
Abstain, he wasn't here.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Do we have a motion on the public meeting minutes?
Motion for public meeting minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you record the vote, please?
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Abstain.
Franklin? Sotolongo?
Abstain.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Election of officers, do we have a motion for chairman?
I would
Or a
nominate
nominee for chairman?
nominate Greg Rosenbaum as chairman of the planning board.
We have a motion and a nominee, a motion and a second, if I'm saying that right. Lisa, will you record the vote?
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Franklin? Yes. Sotolongo?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Do we have a nomination for vice chair?
I would nominate Dave Rosacker for vice chair of the planning board.
We have a nomination and a second. Lisa, will you record the vote, please?
Pate?
Yes.
Moore? Morris? Franklin? Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker? Mr. Chair?
Yes, and thank you for your vote. I appreciate it very much.
Motion approved.
Do we have a motion for adjournment? We have a motion and a second. Lisa, will you record the vote, please?
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Franklin? Morris? Moore? Pate?
Yes.
Rosacker? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion approved. Adjourn 3:55.
Alcorn. Yes.